The issue that we are tackling is the education system, but not exactly what the curriculum may be or what it entails, rather what is happening in the classroom and what is being done to address it, and to hear the thoughts, the experience, and perhaps the opinions of what can be done or what should be done. We welcome this morning to the program TTUTA President, Mr. Martin Lum Kin. Good morning, sir.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me. Good morning to Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, thank you for joining me, sir. Let's start off with the incidence of school violence. This is something that has been spoken about most recently. The Minister of National Security suggesting that a lot of the violence and behavior that is taking place is due to a number of factors, whether it be the exposure to certain genres of movies. We're also hearing that there are over 1,000 students that have been suspended, including one suspected to be a gang leader. What is taking place within the school system that now it seems as though we're raising criminals rather than actually educating students for a better life ahead?
The issue of students and violence and discipline is not a new one. It has been plagued throughout the education system for a while now. What is exacerbating the current situation, among other things, is the proliferation of videos being shared on social media. And that is due to the students having the camera phones and being able to take these videos and sharing it. And so it's being highlighted more now on the social media, mainstream media, and throughout, Trinidad and Tobago. But it is an issue that has been plaguing the system for quite a while. And now more than ever, because the school is a reflection, it's a microcosm of the society, we are seeing that what is taking place in the schools is a reflection of what is taking place in the community and the country at large. And so now more than ever, there needs to be all hands on deck. It cannot be business as usual when it comes to student violence and indiscipline. We have been meeting with the Ministry of Education, and they have reported to us that they have programs that they are going to roll out, which should deal with it. TTUTA has been saying to the Ministry of Education that we cannot be reactive. We need to be proactive. So there may be schools that are flagged. There may be schools that are under the radar that are being looked at in terms of school violence and indiscipline. However, there are schools that are borderline as well too, that programs need to be put in place, interventions, and we cannot wait until it starts to erupt before we, put things to ensure that all the persons on the plant are safe. And so it should start from the ECC level straight up to secondary. We can't wait until then at secondary schools to start these programs.
Well, Mr. Lum Kin, arguably it already has erupted. I would go as far as to say that it is out of control. For example, business as usual. Now, these videos actually bring some level of awareness as to just how far we've gone, how bad we are in terms of what's taking place within the schooling system. But beyond that, a simple little thing such as a cell phone with a camera, as far as I'm aware, it's not permitted on school compounds. Do we need more searches of students to be done, though we're not trying to treat them like criminals? At the same time, a number of students have been caught with knives in school, some with marijuana. And again, a basic thing like a phone with a camera is not allowed. So it's out of control. It seems as though it's business as usual, and not enough checks are being conducted as students enter a compound on a daily basis.
So that's just one of the situations. Now, camera phones are allowed because of the nature and the advanced technology in cell phones. You hardly get a cell phone without a camera now. And students are allowed to bring their phones on the compound due to many reasons. Many years ago, policies were put in place in terms of these handheld devices, use of it. Now, the schools are very much constrained when you have this because the schools are not allowed to confiscate or even keep the cell phones during the course of the day because of legal implications that can happen, that can be brought to bear on the administration and the teachers. So, for example, if you take a child's cell phone and when you return it, they say that it is not working. Um, they give you working and then it's not working. Then the teacher or the school is liable to fix those. Sorry. And so you have a number of other issues. So there are policies, and the Ministry of Education did say to us that they have reissued the policy on handheld devices because that in particular was brought up at our last meeting with the Ministry of Education. And so the school is constrained in order to deal with it, and they have to adapt the policy to suit their schools. In terms of searches, yes, we have, and this is one of the areas that was lacking quite recently, the renewal of contracts for the school safety officers. That's just one of the support groups that the school depends on. The renewal of the contracts did not take place in a timely manner. We understand that they will be, they have been working on it, and schools have been getting. And in terms of the security officers, they're doing checks as much as possible. I can recall years ago that the schools were doing, and I wouldn't call the name of the school, but they were doing the checks. But when the children entered, there was a wall on the northern side of the school, and the students went to the back, and persons from outside the school were throwing over the illicit items, whether it be weapons or illicit drugs and so on. That's how they got it into the school. So you can do as much as you can in terms of the entry. There needs to be enough security personnel who will be patrolling on a timely basis as well too. And that's one of the drawbacks. In some of the schools, the full complement of security officers are not there on a daily basis. We find that if a security officer does not report in a primary school and a secondary school has, say, for example, 5 security officers, they will take one of that person in order to substitute the person who is missing from the other school. So in many schools on a daily basis, they don't have the full complement of officers, and that is what is taking place in some of the schools. Now, you're speaking about it's growing, and so it's the majority of incidents takes place in certain schools and throughout Trinidad, not so much in Tobago. And the issue of the other schools, some schools keep it quiet. Some of the so-called prestige schools keep it quiet. Some of the other schools keep it, under the radar because it's not as bad as other schools. We have been saying to the Ministry of Education, we can call Tranquility Government Secondary School, almost on a termly basis, sometimes monthly, they have issues of violence and indiscipline. And we have been saying to the ministry, deep intervention needs to take place. The Student Support Services Division of the Ministry of Education is supposed to lend support to the schools in terms of the guidance officers, the social workers, even special education teachers. Because you can appreciate another aspect of it is that when students are not achieving, when they don't have that self-confidence, they will find themselves in other avenues where it is projected that they are, they are seen as important.
Mr. Lumpkin, let me just interject for a moment because it's a lot that you are bringing to light, and not all of it is new to me, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous what I'm hearing, like with respect to the renewal of contracts and how that is affecting the support on a school compound on a daily basis, because now we're stretching the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to, at times, even police compounds. within the education system. But beyond that, let me start off with the very first point that you made. To me, it sounds as though everything that you have suggested, just on what you said, ties back into the very first point. It seems as though we are enabling students. It seems as though we are just helping them or allowing them to get away with absolute nonsense. Because whilst I understand that, okay, if you confiscate a student's cell phone and when you return it and it's not working, then there will be arguments about that. At the same time, who are we empowering? Are we empowering teachers to discipline students? Do teachers have that power to discipline students and correct students? It sounds more so as though we're empowering students to do whatever they want to do and as they please.
And yes, it is a very tight situation, ticklish kind of situation as well too. And we could go back in terms of the history of our education system. And many years ago, corporal punishment was allowed in schools. And then we removed corporal punishment unguardedly, so because of the rights of the child and in terms of abuse and so forth and within the law. But we never substituted the corporal punishment, the removal of the corporal punishment with other forms of disciplining the child. And so what had happened, and I was in the primary school system when it happened, some students were saying that you can't touch me because I have rights and I will call the police for you and that kind of thing. So we went from a culture of utilizing corporal punishment, and we know the arguments for and against it, mainly against it because it's basically abuse. And we have the Child Protection Act, which is instituted, and we have the Child Protection Unit of the TTPS, which will enact the legislation. And we are also signatories to the UN Rights of the Child. However, added to that, we got where parents will not support, well, some, let me don't generalize and say all, some parents were not supporting the schools as well too in terms of the discipline of their children. And this is now being, like a snowball. It's getting out of control. And that's one of these situations we have there in terms of the family and the home taking charge of their children. So you speak about enabling the child and so on, and having them have that power. In some situations, there isn't that distinction between who's the parent and who's the child, and so you are sending some of these children with that mindset to so if they have no respect for their parents, what do you expect when they come to school? And then
Mr. Lum Kin, arguably, there's some teachers as well who don't necessarily care. And again, I will not generalize all. There are teachers who go the extra mile. There are teachers who do beyond what they need to do, what is actually required of them. But there are also some teachers who just do not care. Some teachers who are damning the system as well, whether it be not coming to class and teaching, coming to class and old talking, or there's some teachers who actually just do not actually conduct the role and position as a teacher. So even though we understand there is a breakdown within the family home and within the family setting, there is a breakdown in the classroom as well, because you cannot, in some instances, you cannot distinguish between who's the teacher and who's the student.
So true. And I will not, and tutor will not defend any teacher who is not carrying out their duties professionally and taking their role as a teacher seriously. However, I want to say that this is the minority, and we, as you said, not generalizing, but we don't want the teaching service to be judged by these bad eggs in the basket. As with most professionals and professions, you have the one or two errant persons. And we are saying that there are systems in place to deal with those who are not performing or who are errant. Once the procedure is carried out properly, once there is the justice in the whole thing, tutor will defend when there is need to defend. And then there are those who are sometimes prosecuted and persecuted wrongfully. We will defend them as well too. But we as tutor, as a professional body, encourages all our teachers to be professional, and when they are on duty, to carry out their duty as sacred as possible, because the nature of our profession is that we impact on the lives of the young ones, which will in turn in the future impact the nation. And we have always been making that point, that teachers are the ones that drive national development as best as possible. Actually, the profession that impacts on national development the most, because we are the ones that impact on human resource. And not only in terms of careers, but in terms of making positive contributions to the schools. So coming back to your point, yes, we recognize that there are persons who do not take the profession seriously. And we know that there are some who would not contribute towards the positive growth of the profession. However, we recognize that they are the minority, and the majority of our teachers go beyond the call of duty, give more than they're supposed to.
Mr. Lum Kin, are teachers, when they go to school on a daily basis and enter that compound, is there a sense of fear amongst teachers, entering their daily duties, given the level of violence that we're now seeing expressed by students and even carried out by students? And there are times where even parents have intervened, and that was also raised within the public domain. Do teachers themselves now, are they fearful of going to work?
Generally, most teachers are comfortable at their places of work. There are in some areas where the teachers on a daily basis, psychologically, it's affecting them when they have to go to school. On the way to school, they're not sure of their safety. Upon entering the compound, yes, we would have security guards and other things in place. However, they're not sure what could happen during the course of the day. We've had instances in Rose Hill where during the day they would hear gunshots. It was getting closer, and I'm sure you would have seen the video where the teacher in the classroom had to get the children down and stay down and were trying to keep them calm. Thank God we have not had instances of those quite recently. I haven't gotten any report, I should say. However, there are teachers who are very scared of going to school because of the situation. And the administration, I know, and the principals, supervisors are trying their utmost best. However, it is a situation where we really need to pay more attention to. And it requires all arms of the government, NGOs, faith-based institutions, the schools themselves, and the community as well.
Mr. Lum Kin, what are some of the proposals put forward by the Ministry of Education? I know you said earlier that TTUTA is constantly in discussion with the Ministry of Education. I mean, beyond just getting the Trent Tobago Police Service involved, what are some of the measures that have been discussed, if you can reveal any this morning?
As I said earlier, the ministry did inform us that they have several programs that they are going to roll out. We are waiting patiently for those programs. The CEO did indicate that they have these programs in place. There is the Student Support Services Division, and again, I am saying they are understaffed, under-resourced. If they are given the tools and the resources, they can play an important role in the schools, because they go directly into the schools and they give interventions, as well as they have programs as well too. So some of the schools guidance officers, and that's another thing. We look at the job description of the guidance officers and the qualifications, and they lend a certain amount of support, and they are actually supposed to be career guidance officers. We need to have more psychosocial workers qualified in order to give interventions and to give those type of clinical diagnoses as well as the clinical um, interventions that are necessary. Teachers are not qualified for the most part to do these interventions and to diagnose these interventions. So the Student Support Services Division needs to be given more resources because you have these officers who are assigned to a cluster of schools, sometimes 4 to 6 schools, and you have incidents in each school that would warrant that officer to be there on a daily basis. So you need to have these officers assigned to all schools, not just have them assigned to 4 schools. So one day they visit today, next school they visit tomorrow, and so on. They need to be there on a daily basis. The same for our special education teachers. And the whole education system needs to be reviewed because we are based on a colonial system. And it seems that we have a system that is going to have some persons fail. And what about those students who are not progressing as they should in terms of the normal curriculum? And is the curriculum really satisfying the needs of these persons? We have also been speaking about the technical and vocational education training, TVET. The ministry has indicated that they have a program to revamp TVET. We are quietly and optimistically looking forward to those programs because not all of our children will do well in mainstream curriculum. Not all will be doctors, lawyers, and so forth. But there are those who are skilled and can lend support to the nation in terms of their skills. And we need to also focus on this examination, this summative examination that all our students are differently, yes, they are differently abled in terms of their achievements, but they are all preparing for the same standardized test. And so you will, which is a placement exam, which I have to say. It is a placement exam. You're placing children from primary to secondary. And the Constitution allows for the parents to choose their school, that choice of school. However, that is to me not enabling the education system to effectively address the needs of our children. When you have to write an examination to be placed in a secondary school, and we have been banding about universal secondary education, why should you have to write an examination in order to be placed in a school?
Well,
And
Mr.
so
Lumpkin,
when
I'm going to ask you to just pause there. We have to take a quick break here on the Prime. When we return, you'll conclude on that point because we need to get into another issue. I mean, it seems as though the education system is plagued with more issues rather than finding ways to move forward in a positive light because I've been informed that there are a number of schools, for whatever reason, mostly due to infrastructural deficiencies that have not been able to open this week or have had limited days or limited classes this week. It seems as though that the education, that the system that we currently have is designed to fail some students.
And that is so true. When you have a placement examination such as the SCA, and previous to that, the common entrance examination, so which I went through, you have these systems and these examinations. And that's what our teachers, our educators in primary school are focusing on that, having the child prepared for that examination. So you have a standardized test, and all students have to write this. However, all children and students do not learn the same way, and they will, some students will bloom at certain times later on. We all know that psychologically and through the education psychology and so. However, we have these children around the same age having to write the same examination. And yes, we have some students who are doing excellent and doing well, but the examination and the system seems to be failing and having some of our students fail because you have students, a number of students who do not get above 30%. And they are flagged now as, having to either repeat or having remedial work done. The remedial should have been done much earlier, not wait until the child reaches the age of 11, 12, 13, and even going into secondary school. So this system, which is a colonial-based system, which we are still adapting and utilizing in the school, is having some of our students failing, and it is destined for some of the children to fail.
Well, that's just one of the factors that are failing students. So there are many other factors, but that is a huge factor.
Yeah, it is. It is. And when we are not focusing on what is the nature and purpose of education, is it just to certify students? Is it just to prepare them for an examination, a standardized examination? Or is the purpose and nature of education to enable the child and the student to make a positive contribution to society, to be able to adapt to what is taking place in society and make positive changes? And so it will improve the lifestyle of the entire country and the person. One of the points I made recently in terms of violence and indiscipline has to do with corruption, and people don't want to see it. But take, for example, we as educators, we are constantly saying to our students, stay in school, get your subjects, you will get a job, and you will be able to live in society. But then the students are saying that there are some persons in authority and there are some persons outside of a profession who are doing well because of corruption, because of crime. And they are saying this. So your teachers are saying one thing, but in practice and in reality, they are seeing something else. And this is grappling most of our educators in terms of those schools who have violence and discipline, because they are saying that in one hand, the teachers are telling you something, but on the other hand, in reality, they are seeing something else. And corruption not only is pervasive in the society and at the top levels, but it is also within communities as well too. And we have to deal with that. That's one of the areas, to me, is that needs to be addressed.
Well, Mr. Lum Kin, another area that needs to be addressed, and I mentioned this before going to the commercial break, was the issue of the existing infrastructure within the school system. Now, I've gotten calls, I've received information that there are a number of schools that have had limited classes, they've had limited days. Some have had no school at all this week. In one instance, one individual actually called and said that they received a call from the school after dropping off their grandchild to come back and pick him up because they couldn't have classes for the day. Could you give us an update as to remedial works from the Ministry of Education, what TTUTA is aware of? Because it seems as though there's a deafening silence when it comes to maintaining and even upgrading the existing infrastructures, which is, in instances, very much harmful and very much hazardous for students and teachers to be in.
Yes, and TTUTA is very adamant and very strong when it comes to the health and safety of our members, of our educators, and by extension, the students. Because health and safety does not, it will not discriminate. It will not say, well, all right, I will affect you and I would not affect you. It affects everyone. And when it comes to the threat of life and limb, we are very, very strong on having safety ensured, that there are safety committees and that the necessary infrastructural works are done. So we, at our last Ministry of Education meeting, the permanent secretary did say that they have utilized a great deal of their budgetary allocations for infrastructure work and repairs when it came to having schools ready for SEA, and they are focusing on the CSEC and CAPE. And we understand the financial limitations that the industry has. We understand the constraints that they're put under when they don't have the budgetary allocations and the necessary monetary resources. However, we have been saying to the Ministry of Education that is no comfort to our members, to our educators. And
$5 billion is spent a year by the Ministry of Education. I can't understand how they're telling you they don't have the money or the resources.
Because based on their budget, and remember, they don't get the full releases. They have to constantly liaise with the Ministry of Finance in order to get the releases on a timely basis. And so their allocations are based on the releases, as I said, from the Ministry of Finance. But what we are having clearly is schools that are aging and would require attention, different levels for different schools. One of the things that the Ministry of Education has been, to me, lacking is in terms of preventative measures, so that you wait until something happens in order to institute infrastructural upgrades. What about those schools that are slowly aging? Are you putting things in place in order to deal with that? So that we have a number of schools over 40, 50 years. We have those that were built in the 70s, the former junior secondary and senior secondary schools. I have visited a number of them, and you see the levels of disrepair. And these are the conditions that our teachers our educators have to work under. And we keep reminding the ministry, the working conditions of our teachers are the learning conditions of our students. And so when you have conditions that are less than adequate, you cannot get the maximum output. And so, yes, finances is an issue, but I've been also saying, if the government needs to find money for certain aspects, they will find money for it. This, to me, is very important, and they need to find the money in order to institute infrastructural upgrades.
What about the water schedule, these water restrictions? I mentioned it at the beginning of the program this morning that some areas across Trinidad and Tobago will be receiving a water supply once every 10 days. How is that going to affect school systems as well? Because even though they have water tanks, surely that cannot suffice.
And so what the Ministry of Education attempted to do is have WASA ensure that schools are given priority if the schools need to get a truck-borne water supply. And so principals were given numbers to contact the area managers who are responsible for truck-borne water. And so on the most part, I would say that the majority of schools are serviced properly. We will get situations where schools would not get the water on time. And there are procedures in terms of the school following if there is no water, in terms of dismissals and so. Sorry. And let me also say, you spoke about there are some schools who did not open, and then there are schools where the parents were called after they dropped off the children and so. In the past, and unfortunately in the past, there were some ministry officials who felt that on the first day of school, all schools must open, even if there are infrastructural issues. So you open the school and then you deal with dismissal after that. Unfortunately, we do not ascribe to that. And the thing is that I'm saying unfortunately because it is a public relations stunt to show the nation that all schools were ready. But that's not the case in some schools. There's Barapur Astra, which has, I think, a sewer issues and has not opened. But the other thing with that, and let me point out here, is that the Ministry of Education has attempted to have students online, teachers teach online when school has not been reopened. we are in discussions with the Ministry of Education. We are not against the use of technology. We are not against the use of their times where it may be necessary to have the virtual and online classes. However, we are saying, and we have said to the ministry, we are saying to the public, and we are saying to parents that this cannot be an ad hoc kind of arrangement. It cannot be like a light switch. You turn it on when you need to and you take it off when you need to. There must be proper planning. There must be proper policies in place because it can infringe on the rights of the teachers. And as the recognized majority union, you need to speak with us. Now, there are conversations between the chief personnel officer, the CPO, who is the employer, and the Ministry of Education. However, we have not come to a consensus and an agreement at this point in time. So at this point in time, we are not encouraging it unless you have proper dialogue and discussion. So TTUTA may seem to be a hindrance when it comes to it. It is not that we don't recognize the use of technology, and in some instances, however, let us have the proper dialogue. Let us come up with a proper policy which will spell out all the terms and conditions, all the the necessary nature of it, and then we can go forward in it. But it cannot be an ad hoc situation.
Mr. Lum Kin, thank you very much for your time this morning. So that's all the time that we have, but the interview went beyond what we had planned, which, if I may say so, is a very good thing. So thank you very much for your time, sir, and all the very best. And I look forward to hearing some updates very soon. Need I say some very positive updates, because if such conversations that we are having does not equate to any meaningful change, then perhaps we ourselves are wasting our times. And let's hope that's not the case. So keep well, sir, and all the very best.
Thank you very much. And on a final note, we're very good at talk shops. When it comes to instituted, that's where the problem is. But it is my pleasure anytime to be on your program. And let me wish you and the entire company all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All the best. Take care.